There is a number that I want you to hold in your mind while I tell you this story. 94. 94 missed calls on a cell phone screen, stacking up like interest on a debt, all from a man who could not be troubled to miss a single day of a vacation he had planned for months. I watched that number climb from a hospital bed in Memphis, Tennessee, on a gray Wednesday morning in October, with 3 broken ribs that made every breath feel like a negotiation with my own body, and I did not answer a single one. Not one. My name is Raymond Parker. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life I believed loyalty looked like sacrifice. I believed if you kept giving enough, eventually the people you loved would notice what it cost you. Turns out, some people just get comfortable receiving. The accident happened Monday evening at an intersection I had crossed 1,000 times before. A delivery truck ignored a red light and folded the front end of my Lincoln like paper. 3 broken ribs, fractured wrist, bruised kidney. The doctor called it significant trauma. I called it a miserable week. The first person I contacted Tuesday morning was my son, Gary. I always called Gary first, maybe because he was blood. Maybe because fathers spend years chasing approval from sons who stopped needing them long ago. Whatever the reason, I dialed him from room 214 at St. Augustine Regional and told him plainly where I was and what had happened. There was silence on the line. Not shocked silence, calculating silence. Then I heard his wife Lucy speaking quietly in the background. I couldn't make out every word, but I knew the tone. They were figuring something out together. Finally, Gary cleared his throat. "Dad, here's the thing. Our Maldives trip leaves tomorrow." I closed my eyes and let him continue. The resort had cancellation penalties. The flights were non-refundable. Lucy had already packed. Besides, the doctors said I wasn't in danger, right? Right. I told him to go. The relief in his voice came too fast to hide. He promised to call every day. Told me to get some rest. Then hung up before I could answer. I stared at the ceiling for a long time after that call ended. 9 years. 9 straight years I had been depositing $6,000 a month into Gary's account, because every few months there was another emergency, another investment opportunity, another rough patch that somehow never ended. And still, when I was lying in a hospital bed struggling to breathe, a beach resort mattered more. Around 8 that morning, a nurse named Brenda came in to check my IV. She took one look at my face and asked if I wanted to talk about whatever was bothering me. I told her my son had chosen a vacation over visiting me in the hospital. She stopped writing on her tablet. Then she gave me a look I still remember clearer than the accident itself. Not pity, worse, understanding. L. If you've ever sat quietly through disappointment from someone you would have done anything for, subscribe to the channel. Some stories are painful because they're true. Before Brenda left the room, I made 2 phone calls that changed everything. The first was to my accountant. The second was to a private nursing agency. And by Wednesday morning, my phone had 94 missed calls from Gary. And for the first time in 30 years, I was finally ready to stop pretending I didn't see exactly who my son had become. The first call that morning lasted less than 3 minutes. My accountant, Ben, answered on the second ring like he always did. Calm, efficient, the kind of man who organized his thoughts before speaking them. I told him to suspend the monthly transfer to Gary immediately. No hesitation, no questions about family drama. Just one sentence. How much was the transfer again? $6,000. A pause while he typed. Done. That was it. 9 years of automatic support, erased faster than it took Gary to order room service in the Maldives. The second call was to a private nursing agency downtown. By noon, they had assigned me a live-in nurse named Denise to help once I was discharged. That decision mattered more than I understood at the time. Because Denise showed up. Gary didn't. But Turner did. He walked into room 214 that afternoon, still wearing his freight yard jacket, dust on his boots, hard hat marks pressed into his forehead from a 12-hour shift. He didn't waste time with panic or dramatic reactions. He looked at the monitor beside my bed, the brace on my wrist, the bruises across my ribs, then pulled a chair closer and sat down. What do you need? That was the entire question. Not what happened. Not why didn't anyone call me. Just 4 words that somehow carried more love than everything Gary had said to me in years. I asked how he even knew I was there. Turner said Mrs. Pettigrew from my neighborhood saw the ambulance Monday night, and called the freight yard herself because she figured someone should know. That woman had probably saved me from sitting in that room alone for 3 days. Turner stayed until nearly dark. At one point, he disappeared downstairs and came back with coffee and a sandwich from the deli across the street. No mushrooms. He remembered I hated mushrooms from a conversation we'd had nearly 20 years earlier. That kind of thing stays with you, especially when you realize who notices you and who only notices what you provide. Turner wasn't my biological son. He was my sister Maggie's boy. When Maggie died suddenly from an aneurysm, Turner was only 9 years old. One moment she was making dinner, the next she was gone. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. I took him in because there was nobody else. At least that's what I told people. The truth was more complicated. Somewhere along the line, Turner stopped feeling like an obligation and started feeling like the son who actually saw me. He worked beside me for years without asking for favors, learned the freight business from the ground up, took the ugly shifts nobody wanted, solved problems quietly, never kept score. And somehow, despite all of that, I spent decades trying harder to earn Gary's attention instead. That realization sat heavy on my chest long after Turner left that night. Not heavier than the ribs, but close. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. I barely slept. Every time I rolled over, pain shot through my side hard enough to steal my breath. Denise arrived at 8:15 sharp. Within an hour, she had reorganized my medication schedule, corrected mistakes in my discharge paperwork, and somehow convinced maintenance to finally fix the broken ventilation unit above my bed that had rattled non-stop since Monday. Competent people change the atmosphere around them. You feel it immediately. Turner came back later with coffee from my favorite place on Madison Avenue. Splash of cream, no sugar. Exactly right. We sat quietly for a while before I finally told him something I had been thinking about since the accident. My will needs to change. Turner looked up slowly. The existing will was 17 years old. Back then, I still believed keeping the peace in the family mattered more than telling the truth. But pain has a strange way of clearing fog from your mind. So does disappointment. I told Turner I had an appointment Thursday with my estate attorney, Arthur Simmons. He immediately shook his head. "Ray, you don't owe me anything." That sentence nearly broke me more than the accident, because he meant it. After everything he had done, Turner still wasn't asking for a single thing. I looked at him across that hospital room and realized something ugly about myself. I had spent 30 years rewarding entitlement while expecting loyalty to survive on gratitude alone. That kind of imbalance eventually destroys a family, and I was finally done feeding it. If you've ever watched someone quietly carry responsibilities nobody thanked them for, subscribe. The world notices loud people first, but the quiet ones are usually the ones holding everything together. Thursday afternoon, Turner drove me downtown to Arthur's office, and before we walked inside, I made a decision that was going to change all of our lives forever. Arthur already had the paperwork waiting when we arrived. 17 pages, blue ink, 31 years of my life sitting on a polished conference table. I signed every page without hesitation. Parker Logistics, the company I built from one lease truck into a $14 million business, was going to Turner. Not because he asked, because he earned it. Gary would still receive the lake house. I wasn't cutting him out completely. Despite everything, he was still my son, and love does not disappear just because disappointment moves in beside it. But the monthly money ended there. Arthur sealed a letter I'd written for Gary the night before from my hospital bed. 1 page, no anger, no cruelty. Just truth. I told him I loved him completely. Then I told him I was done paying for the privilege of his attention. Those words followed me all the way back to the hospital. And waiting outside room 214 was Gary. He had flown home early, expensive luggage still in his hand, vacation tan still on his face, but the confidence he usually carried so easily was gone. He looked at me, then at Turner, then back at me again. "You changed the will?" Not confusion. Fear. I told him everything would be explained in the letter, waiting at his house Friday morning. Then I said the thing I should have said years earlier. "I love you, Gary, but I can't keep financing a relationship that only exists when you need something from me." The anger hit his face first, then something underneath it cracked. For the first time in years, my son looked less like a man demanding something and more like a child realizing he might finally lose it. And standing beside me quietly through all of it was the son who never once made me earn his love. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is finally tell the truth.